welcome back. I am Mr. Disastrous. It is Monday, and this week I'm going to be talking about a book that I love dearly, and that is Wuthering Heights by Emily Brontë. This is a book that I've read a number of times. I'm rereading it right now because I wanted to kind of end the spooky season with something which is kind of transitions from sort of the Halloween vibe into the sort of November winter chill sort of vibe, and this does that very well. But this is a book that I highly recommend, especially if you're looking to get into sort of classic literature and you don't know where to start. This is a good one. It's not very long, but it tells the story of kind of a doomed romance between two selfish but very attractive people, and that's Heathcliff and Catherine. And you've probably heard of Heathcliff. He's made it into pop culture, and he's a very famous kind of Byronic figure. This book kind of comes from the Romantic tradition and also the Gothic tradition, so it's a Gothic novel as well as a Romantic novel. And I say Romantic in terms of like the 19th century Romantic period, not romantic as in like tender as the storm or something like that. But it's just a ton of fun, and it's very moody, and the reviewers of the day didn't really get it because the characters are all kind of mean to each other and everyone is sort of awful, and there's no like valiant hero or virtuous heroine or anything like that. It sort of challenges a lot of kind of assumptions about why are we rooting for these people if they're bad people kind of thing. But Heathcliff is a really great character. Heathcliff is kind of like Cher. He only has one name. And so I will say the book describes him as like very dark skinned. But in this day and age, that just means that he looks kind of like a decently tanned Italian person. Like, it doesn't really mean that he's necessarily not white. But I do think you can read the character as a non-white character. He's kind of an outsider, and he's separated from a lot of other people by class. He's brought in as a foundling, and so no one really knows what his family history is. So you can definitely read it as sort of this kind of very progressive sort of interracial romance, but all right, so the central duo, Heathcliff and Catherine, are both sort of awful people, but they're perfect for one another. And of course everything kind of happens in the world where it takes them a while to sort of realize that and kind of come together. But it's sort of a dark romance more than anything. It's not a happy, sparkly romance. It's kind of grim at times. First-time readers should know this is sort of a story within a story. There's two narrators at first. There's the frame story with this guy named Lockwood, who's sort of a tenant of Heathcliff's, and he sort of stumbles onto this sordid story. And he's told the bulk of the story by the housekeeper. And she tells him kind of the whole story, beginning to end kind of thing. The cast of characters is filled with like selfish, terrible people. But unlike something like Oliver Twist, you don't really have like a main heroic character to sort of root for. It's sort of like you become invested in this emotional train wreck that is Heathcliff and Catherine's relationship. And so you just kind of sit there, eating popcorn furiously while these two people kind of create their own doom. And that's just kind of what you're invested in. It's kind of like reality TV. It's like these people are terrible, but you can't stop watching them. That's kind of what this is. One thing I will say about the language of this book is that it's quite florid. If you read other books kind of from around this time period, they tend to be a little more like, I don't know, readable. That's not the best word for it, but they're a little easier to read. This one can be a little difficult to read at times, just because it's very heightened, and it comes from that Gothic tradition, and so it's very kind of opulently described, and the characters are all very complex and nuanced, and you're not going to have like any archetypes really, except for Heathcliff, who's the Byronic hero kind of thing. But you're not going to have very many like stock characters. Everyone feels like a real complex, multifaceted person in this kind of web of craziness that entraps all the characters. So I will say, just if you the first time you're reading it, especially if you're reading it in audio form, just kind of allow yourself to sort of flow along with the language for a bit, so it can kind of get you into sort of the rhythm of it. Once you're kind of familiar with it, you won't have any issues. But I know one thing, the language can be very complicated at times, and so you might throw some people off. But give it a chance, and even if you don't want to read the book, there's a lot of really great film adaptations of it, and you should read it, because Wuthering Heights is great, and I love these ridiculous, awful characters. I will also say there is a scene that involves a ghost, and it may or may not be a dream, but still, I don't care. It's a ghost, and it's a very cool scene, so, we'll go from there. But this book is so worth it, and the characters' arcs are very twisty and turny, and dramatic things happen, and it's just a whole lot of fun. So if you have read this, I'm curious to see what you thought of it. Did you love it? Did you hate it? Were you forced to read it in school and didn't enjoy it? I'd love to hear everyone's kind of opinions on this one. So with that, I'll let you go. I will see you next week, and in the meantime, happy reading. Bye.